Hello, fans of the Preferred Walk-On show, a college football about. Nope, I did it again. I'm just going to keep going with it.
Yeah.
I want you all to know that last week I went to intro us and I said a college football about college football. It is a college football show about college football. So that's where we're at. I'm Jeremy. That's Meech. And eventually this intro will go correctly. Meech, a crazy week 2 in college football for a week that was not supposed to have any sort of really big games. There was a lot of
ended up getting really weird, huh?
yeah, it was one of those weeks where things got very college football, and it was,
Yeah,
it was a lot of
exactly.
fun to watch. And it starts with the team that we've been referencing 8 or 9 times per show, purely because we are alumni, and that is UCF and Stanford.
I mean, we can't contractually not talk about UCF because of how much money both of us have invested in the university, right?
Yeah, we literally have thousands upon thousands of dollars invested in the university. And so we have to, just out of pure financial guilt, talk about UCF to start this show.
Right.
You know what? Before I go and do my thing here, I would love to know. So I was at the game.
Right. Yeah.
You were sitting in the comfort of your own home watching. And so you probably got to break down the game in a little bit of a different way than I did, as I was just jumping up and down like a crazy person. So I would love to know what your thoughts on UCF's absolute just dismantling of Stanford.
Right. So the final score ended up being 45-27. It wasn't that close of a game in any way, shape, or form. I mean, Stanford scored 17 points in the fourth quarter alone. In what was essentially, I mean, it was garbage time after halftime, right?
Right. Well, S&P, Bill Connolly's SP Plus had 43% of the game as garbage time.
Right, which is insane.
That's an insane number.
I think my biggest takeaway from this game, and we talked a little bit about it before we hopped on here, is this really felt to me like Dylan Gabriel slamming, like not even just closing, he slammed the door shut for any hope of Brandon Wimbush getting any significant, meaningful playing time on this offense, and even possibly Daryl Mack at this point. I don't see how now you can go from, I mean, we back-to-back weeks, and even if you want to take the first week into account, it's just flat out incredible, right? He's arguably he's already a top 15 quarterback in college football, if not higher. The accuracy he displayed, and obviously, this is coming from a place where I'm a UCF fan, I'm a UCF alumni. So you can take this for a grain of salt if you want, but other people around the country are saying these sorts of things too, where, I mean, coming into the year, it was a question of if UCF had a top 4 quarterback in the conference. I think he might be the best quarterback in the conference.
I mean, De'Ara King's still really good.
Yeah, De'Ara King's incredible, right?
Yeah.
And that's the only one that I could even consider, and maybe Anthony Russo.
But even then though, I could make the argument to you that for what UCF needs, that Dylan Gabriel is the best quarterback because his accuracy. So this is the thing that we talked about going into the season, right? When Brandon Wimbush was named the starter, what was the thing that you and I were concerned about? We weren't concerned about his ability to move the ball with his legs, and we weren't even necessarily concerned all that much about being able to push the ball downfield. Our concern, though, was inaccuracies. Our concern after the FAMU game was inaccuracies on the deep ball, because specifically this offense is so predicated on we have better athletes than you on the outside, and not just better athletes, better route runner. Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis is an animal.
Oh, my God. The way that Gabe Davis just absolutely abused
Paulson Abeto
all game long.
Paulson Adebo might be the first corner taken in the NFL draft this year.
Right.
I mean, you have the kid from LSU who's really good, and then the kid from Florida, Henderson, whose name is
Paulson Adebo will be a top 3 or 4 corner taken in the NFL draft. He will be a first-round pick.
And Gabe Davis took him to the woodshed. Yeah.
Well, and so Gabe had 7, I believe it was 7 targets He caught 4 balls for 63 yards and a touchdown. But what's funny is
the touchdown was disgusting.
Well, the touchdown was gross. One of the incompletions was his foot was just barely out on the sideline, or it would have been another 50-yard catch. One was a miscommunication on a route that would have been another touchdown. And then the last one, I think, if I'm not wrong, I believe the last one was just it was like slightly high, like it was just a bad throw because Gabriel got pressured. So it wasn't even near Gabe Davis for there to be a play made. He just absolutely dominated. And so what I was going to say is the thing that concerned us about Brandon Wimbush was his inaccuracies. Dillon Gabriel is already maybe the most accurate passer in UCF football history.
All right. Yeah. I mean,
just naturally accurate.
Put up some,
McKenzie became that. But I'm saying just stepping in and immediately, like as an 18-year-old kid doing this, like McKenzie Milton became a ridiculously accurate passer, especially on the deep ball. Like nobody threw in all of college football last year. Literally nobody threw a better deep ball than McKenzie Milton.
Or even the year before, for that matter.
Either year. In either of the undefeated seasons, McKenzie Milton threw the best deep ball in college football, and that was what made UCF's offense so prolific. And that's why Dillon Gabriel should be the guy, period. Because the fact that he can throw the deep ball the way that he can with the accuracy that he can, there was not a ball thrown against Stanford that wasn't perfect when he had the time to throw. Perfect.
I just want to say this before we wrap up too. Gabriel's going to obviously and rightfully get a lot of the credit. The offensive line for UCF is just it's one of the best in the country, just flat out. The running backs had space all day. Greg McCrae had another game where he averaged almost 10 yards a carry. The skill position players are just ridiculous. And just to be able, not everybody would be able to do what Gabriel is doing with this talent around him.
No, but most would. Most good quarterbacks could.
You would be at least 85% of what he's doing if you were a serviceable quarterback, right? So I just want to give credit to because Trey Nixon had a big game. Marlon Williams had a big game. Otis in limited spurts had a big game. It's
funny. I just said Gabriel needs to be the quarterback XYZ. If not for the protection, who knows the type of game that he has. Now that's why quarterbacks are so often giving credit to the rest of their team. Like, I couldn't have done this without. There's a reason, and that really was a team win, especially on the offensive side of the ball, because the offensive line did so much to protect. There was a run late in the game by Bentavious Thompson that I can't wait for that kid to be the feature back. But
he's nice.
Thompson, he just hid behind the offensive line and then dipped out for like a 40-yard run late in the game. But the offensive line was absolutely mauling Stanford all game long. And so Gabriel never had to really worry about pressure. He just had to put the ball where it was necessary because his skill position players were dominating and the offensive line was dominating. That said, he was so remarkably accurate that it allowed everything to click on all cylinders.
And the defense played so well that there was no pressure on the offense. The offense could just go out and do what they've been doing, which is if you guys score the 30 points that we know you're going to score,
you're going to win.
We're going to win the game because we're not – Richie Grant, to me, that was one of his – he only finished with 8 tackles, but
he
was all over the field.
Yeah, he was all over the field.
You can't watch a UCF game without Grant showing – he's the best player on that defense, and he might be, if not for Grant Delpit, he's one of the best safeties in the entire country.
What's funny is that UCF's offense gets all of the credit, understandably. For that matter, they should get all of the credit, right? They have been the dominant force for now going on 3 years. That said, Richie Grant might actually be the best player at UCF.
Like what
he does on the defensive side of the ball. To me, it's between him and Gabe Davis. But what he does on the defensive side of the ball, and you can also you see it. He's calling the plays. It's not often anymore. I know last year Pat Jasinski, a middle linebacker, as a senior, had the opportunity to sort of be the commander of the field. It seems to me, at least from watching the team, that Richie Grant's the one sort of calling out defensive assignments. So the only place they struggled was that big-ass tight end at Stanford who just was abusing.
Yeah, but he's going to do that to everybody.
Yeah, he's a monster. but yeah, I mean, all this showed me, and it was interesting. And then we really do need to move on because we spent 10 minutes on this, and it's my fault. But uh, what this showed me was it doesn't matter who UCF plays; they're going to be a dominant force. And it's nice to see basically all of the national media changing their tune on does UCF belong with the big boys. And now not everybody's in the exact same space. There's some people that are already saying they're 7. That's where I'm at. It's like there's that the 5 that we talked about before the season.
I think unquestionably this is a top 10 team in the country,
and that's the space where everybody's going. Well, that's the space where everybody went after this game, which is interesting. And so I almost wonder if UCF does dominate over Pitt, and we'll get there in a minute. But the question I want to ask for people to mull on until we get there is, if UCF does dominate over Pitt, who theoretically is a worse team than Stanford, does UCF actually get a bigger bump in the polls just because this week's reaction to them being 15? So voters that see it happen again against a Power 5 team and go, all right, that's it, top 10.
On the road this time.
On the road, and also there's a couple of like teens teams that we'll preview that are playing each other. Penn State, who's 13, just played Pitt and kind of hang close. So there's a lot of ways that UCF could actually strangely get a better bump after beating Pitt on the road than they did dominating Stanford at home. So it'll be interesting. But nonetheless, it felt damn good to watch that game.
All right, let's move on to the game Day was at last week, El Asico, as they call it. And it was ass. It was a very ass game, but still pretty entertaining.
Pretty entertaining.
Starting off with a lightning delay is pretty much the most, like, the perfect way to start the game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Delayed because of weather, and then because of the weather being bad, the field conditions were pretty ass. Purdy and Stanley were both pretty good.
Yeah, they were both fine.
But Purdy killed the team with his fumbles. And this might be like that. I didn't put this as the most college football thing I saw.
Yeah.
But Iowa State losing on its punt. So I was punting the ball, giving Iowa State basically a chance to win the game with only like 2 or 3 minutes left, I believe it.
Yeah.
And they punted the ball, and Iowa State's returner is sitting right under it, just unencumbered. He's going to catch it. It's going to be a fair catch. And then, Iowa's like, Brock Purdy's going to come out and have a chance to win the game, right? And the guy that is supposed to be blocking for the punt returner, so I've watched this play at least 1,000 times, and I do not understand how he became a human torpedo and just blew up his own return man, causing a muff on the he muffed the punt, and then Iowa gets on top of it, runs out the clock, and the game's over.
And that's it. Yeah, I don't know how that happens in such a big game, too. It was just weird. Like, it wasn't even like – there's no explanation for what happens there.
I mean, if I was a fan sitting in the stadium, I would just be like, what do you say to the people around you? Like, oh, man, like, that sucks. Like – It was the single most incredible way to lose a game that I think I've seen so far this year.
Yeah, what's weird is that like the way that it ended was just so unsatisfying, which is exactly what you anticipate from Iowa State, right? Like, but it's also, I guess it doesn't really tell me that much about either team. Like,
no, I was actually going to bring that up because last week you were talking about how you still don't know what Iowa State is.
That game did nothing to help me learn. That game.
I mean, I will say this. They need to find a way to run the ball more effectively.
Yeah.
Like they figured out replacing Hakeem Butler at wide receiver. What they've not figured out is replacing David Montgomery in the backfield. I mean, Brock Purdy, I think to this point is still their leading rusher on the season. And that's just not going to fly. Like, that's just not going to sit well moving out. But both of these teams' defenses seem to be pretty legit. Stanley and Purdy, like, if Purdy can cut back on the fumbles, I think that Iowa State could still very well make some noise in the Big 12. Right. And Iowa, for all we know, is still on pace to be up there with Wisconsin as the team to beat in the Big 10 West.
Yeah.
These teams. I mean, these are both conference championship competitors still in my mind.
That's the weird part is like both of them did not play very well, but their
Right.
defenses were solid enough. And the thing that we do know about both teams is they have solid defense and above average quarterback play.
Right.
And there's not a lot of teams. There's probably, if we're going to be totally frank about it, there's probably 20 teams in the country that you can say that about, where
Right.
it's like consistently above average quarterback play plus consistently good defense. Because even if you go through the top 25 teams, there's probably only 15 in that group that you can say that about. Maybe. So to know that you're going to get consistently good quarterback play and have a really solid defense does lead you to the point where you can feel confident going into conference play. I still don't know what Iowa State is, though. Like Iowa State could absolutely fall apart and not even make a bowl game, and I'd be like, yeah, and they could
It would be
win
wonderful
their
if
conference.
you just never know. If you just never end up knowing
The
what
whole
Iowa
season
State
could
is.
happen, and I might not know what Iowa State is, but you know, it is what it is, I guess.
Yep. So, I mean, both of these teams, now they can start rebounding and going into conference play. And you know, then we'll break them down further from there. But let's move on now to
Coward.
Just
Coward.
call me
Coward. You're a coward.
I literally sat
a coward.
there. Nope. I literally sat there and like for more than half of the preview explained why Temple would win the game.
More than half. It was the entire preview.
And then for whatever reason, I picked Maryland. So everything I ended up thinking about the game ended up being true.
That's exactly what happened.
In the sense that I knew Temple's defense was going to play very well.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Maryland traditionally loses this sort of game after starting off.
Always.
And I knew Anthony Russo might have been the better of the two quarterbacks playing in this game.
Anthony Russo.
But I didn't see, and I think this is where we should start. Maryland did have 8 chances from within the 10-yard line to win the game because they start off, they move the ball down the field. They're on the 1-yard line. 4 straight runs by Anthony McFarland, who's one of the best running backs in the country.
And he can't get it.
He gets stuffed all 4 times.
How that happens, I'll never understand.
Right. So Temple gets that huge stop, but then they get the ball. They only get like 5 or 6 yards, and then they have to punt after a 3 and out. And Maryland is gifted with the punter hitting a 7-yard punt.
It's unbelievable.
So Maryland takes the ball back over at their own like 15-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
Moves the ball on the first play back within the 5 and gets 4 more goal line chances. This is all within like 2 minutes of the game ending.
Right.
And they have a chance to get the walk-off touchdown and win the game. And to Temple's credit, man, the defense stepped up.
The defense didn't break.
Plays and won them this game. And now, I mean, that's a huge win for the AAC considering how some of the top-level teams have played so far this year.
Right.
And, I mean – Temple to me is the scariest threat to UCF in conference at this point.
That's literally right where I was about to go. Is Temple's good. Like Temple's legit. Temple played UCF tough last year. And all they did, and we talked about it in the conference preview, they were getting almost everything back. Like when we talked about this a few weeks, 2 months ago now when we did that preview, we were talking about how Temple gets nearly everything back and how
all they lost was Raquel Armstead, but you knew they were still going to run the ball.
Right. And that's part of their identity. They didn't really lose much of their offensive line, and Anthony Russo was a legitimately good quarterback. And so when you have again, what did we just say about Iowa and Iowa State? Really good quarterback play, really good defense, and Temple has that combination. And in the American Athletic Conference, probably it's a top 5 defense for sure in that conference, and it's a top 3 quarterback for sure in that conference. Right. And so that's a pretty good combination to win a lot of football games. And certainly considering, I believe it's like when UCF goes to Temple, I think it's Halloween, like a Thursday night game at Temple. That's their Super Bowl. You know, like that's a scary game looking ahead now. The more that you look at Temple and realize that they're a really solid football team. And the other thing that I would have to say is take away Clemson and take away UCF, and the AAC and the ACC are the same thing. Like, they're the same conference, man. You
Temple's the Virginia of the AAC. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, whether it's whether it's Temple, whether it's Memphis, whether it's Cincinnati, I don't think there's those three teams, and even throw Houston in there because Houston's 1-2, but they've lost to Washington State and Oklahoma, who
two of the top 5 offenses in the country, right?
Every ACC team, every single ACC team besides Clemson would have lost to both of those teams as well. So if you group Houston, Temple, Cincinnati, Memphis as a group there, give me your 4 best ACC teams, and to me, it's not like a gigantic distinction between the 4 best ACC teams after Clemson and the 4 best AAC teams after UCF. So the way that ultimately plays out this year, now there's not that much more cross-conference competition, but the way that ultimately plays out this year, and whatever the reputation ultimately ends up being of the AAC and the ACC, may have been flipped a little bit by this game. This one game, which is crazy, but this one game may have sort of flipped that narrative, and that's really interesting going forward to see how both of these teams finish out the year.
And I do want to say this about Maryland before we move on. Their offensive line got pretty much manhandled this whole game.
Well, and that was what was helping them so much prior to that.
Right, and so Josh Jackson looked really bad behind what was – that was really just an awful performance by their offensive line.
Yeah.
And if that's how their offensive line is going to play throughout the rest of the season, they're in for a long one because they still have to play Penn State, one of the best defensive – most talented defensive lines in the country.
Yeah.
They still have to play Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, and Michigan State. It's going to be a long year for Maryland unless they can bounce back along up front. But let's move on now to BYU USC. I had a tweet.
Hold on a second. I just realized that I'm an idiot because
what's up?
I just realized that Maryland is not in the ACC.
No, they're not.
I just did all of that about the ACC, but the reason that I went there was because of the way the Maryland manhandled Syracuse. So let me just
for what it's worth, everyone still thinks Maryland's in the ACC.
Yeah, no. So either way, my point on that sort of still stands.
No, it does, 100%.
My premise there, I just realized for the people that I confused myself, but also for the people listening that might have been confused, I was not saying that because of Maryland being in the ACC as much as the way Maryland looked against what was supposed to be a top ACC team in Syracuse, and then the way they looked against one of the top AAC teams in Temple, and thus that's where that comparison came from. So for those of you that were confused, and even I confused myself about Maryland there, let me just take a second to step back, apologize for confusing you, apologize for confusing myself, and move on and say that Maryland is going to suck in the Big Ten. All right, let's continue.
So BYU USC, I have a tweet here that I tweeted out at 3 a.m. on September 14th, which is the night before. So that's Friday night going into Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Because I work pretty late, so I'm just scrolling through Twitter.
Yeah,
I have a kid that I follow that tweets about BYU all the time. Apparently, he's a huge. I don't know why or how he's a BYU fan, but so he tweets out, "Media people are disrespecting BYU in this USC matchup. I hope BYU comes out and smacks USC in the mouth." So me being me, I'm just trying to start a discussion early in the morning. I tweeted him. Typically, a game USC has lost under Clay Helton. Get a big conference win, and then lose on the road to a quality opponent. BYU definitely deserves more respect than they're getting. And sure enough, BYU ends up winning 30-27.
In
overtime. Despite USC throwing 3 interceptions and not forcing any turnovers on their own, they were still very much in this game, which you have to take as a positive. The negative, obviously, is that now you've got a loss on the season, but it's not in conference. And hopefully this ends up being for them Kadon Slovis's true freshman moment game, and he won't throw 3 interceptions again moving forward because other than that, the offense moved the ball very well.
Yeah, the USC loss is disappointing.
I mean, it was bound to happen. It was bound to happen after UCF won, right?
Of course, right? Of course. But it's disappointing on multiple levels. Number one, in that respect, right, where you needed USC to look like a good team. But number two,
this is the 3rd of 4 games that we've framed in the UCF context for what it's.
Shut up. this if this show's not going to be a UCF talk show, we at least need to frame it in the context of UCF. All right,
Everything we see is through
it
UCF
is what it is, man. Why would anybody view college football any other way? They're the legitimate powerhouse of this nation. So America's team. So what I would say in regards to USC, just specifically on a USC level, is that what a crappy game to lose, right? Because you had so much momentum, and if you're Clay Helton, if you even want to keep this job, which like at this point, man, I don't even know.
I don't know he does.
I don't know that he does, but like if you're Clay Helton and you want to keep this job, this is a game you got to win, and that's not to say that BYU is a very, very good football team. Mormon Manziel over there.
Bro, I love Zach Wilson, by the way. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's great, and he's fun to watch. And those are the types of dynamic quarterbacks that ultimately are able to beat teams that are supposed to be better than them, right? That's how that works constantly. But the thing that's disappointing if you're USC is like you had such a great performance and dominant performance against Stanford. I mean, really, it looked like everything was finally coming together with these athletes. It didn't matter who was playing quarterback, whether it was Kenan Slovis or JT Daniels in game one. It looked like the offense was clicking on all cylinders under Graham Harrell and his guidance. Like everything looked great on both sides of the ball. And then you come out and you're dominated in the turnover battle. It didn't really look like they were dominating in the trenches by any means, which they should be against a team like BYU. And all of a sudden, your season's back on this, like, basically every other week, if you lose a game, your head coach could be fired. And that's such a strange and shitty space to be in, to be quite frank.
And it's not good for them either. They needed that win against BYU because this is their upcoming schedule. They play versus Utah this weekend.
Hey.
Then they go at Washington the weekend after that. Then they go to South Bend to play Notre Dame the week after that. Then, they have Arizona, Colorado. Those should be wins, right?
Yeah, but they might lose 3 in a row there, man.
And then they close the season with versus Oregon, at Arizona State, at Cal, and then versus USC. There's legitimately only 3 wins that I'm sure about left on the schedule. And if USC finishes with 5 wins, we're talking about Urban Meyer coaching USC in 2021.
That's going to suck.
You know what's happening, right? That's what it's setting up for.
Everybody's setting it up for that, and I hate it. He's
working with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush right now. I'm telling you.
He's working with the two of them. They'll be there.
He's already out in Los Angeles doing the studio show for Fox.
He'll hire Matt Leinart as his offensive coordinator. That'd be awesome.
But I will say this about BYU, and then we can move on to the next game.
Yeah.
BYU's a good team. I don't know why they're not in the Pac-12. They definitely should be at this point.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how good they are, but I do know for a fact that is a quality, good football team. So losing to them isn't the end of the world.
That's if you're USC, you feel good because that's for sure a top 10 group of 5 team, if not a top 5 group of 5 team.
Well, they're an independent, but yeah, you're right.
Come on, nobody phrases BYU. BYU's not Notre Dame.
BYU's not in the Power 5. Why
no.
can?
No,
I get what you're saying.
Notre Dame of the 2 independent teams that are Notre Dame and BYU. Notre Dame is the Power 5 one. BYU is the Group of 5 one. Right? Let's be real. Like in the context of the way we discuss all of these things, BYU is for all intents and purposes a Group of 5 team, and at that they are a top 5 of those teams more likely than not. If you stuck them in the American Athletic Conference, they'd probably be the 2nd or 3rd best team.
All right, let's move on here to an SEC Big Ten matchup.
Oh, yeah.
That's strangely, it ended up being a very good game. I actually watched a lot more of this than I expected to. The shit-talking in this game was incredible.
It was a really tough physical game.
Yeah. I want to – I don't know if I can find the video, but before the season – but like before spring practices even – Kansas State's best receiver, Isaiah Zuber, announces he's going to graduate and transfer to Mississippi State.
Right.
That's fine. He's allowed to do whatever he wants. He's graduated. It's within the rules of the NCAA to transfer, even if that opponent is on your schedule the next year, as long as you've graduated, right?
Correct.
But you knew it would set up for moments like what ended up happening in this game where Garrett Schrader is in now for Tommy Stevens, who was both ineffective and injured in this game for Mississippi.
Yeah.
He's in there. He's actually looked pretty good up to this point, but it's a huge third down where Mississippi State needs to move the ball in order to keep hopes of winning the game. And sitting wide open in the middle of the field is Isaiah Zuber, like 2 yards beyond the first down marker to move the chains, and he just hits him in the chest and he drops it.
Oh.
And I am not kidding. I don't know if you saw this live. You might have been at the UCF game.
Yeah, I don't think I saw it.
I'm not kidding when I say all 11 guys from the Kansas State defense, Zuber is on his hands and knees, like just dejected. And
they're all
11 guys are just within a yard of him. Like the defensive lineman got up from like whatever they were doing with the offensive line and ran to meet the rest of the defense. And they're just in his face barking at him.
Man.
And it was – and, like, I hate it when, you know, people pick on – like, because these are college kids, right?
Of course.
But it was just such a perfect moment.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I loved it so much, and I wish I could find the video, but I don't know who would have it.
We could try, but if all of a sudden you're watching this and there's video over it, we found it. If not, we didn't find it.
But a few takeaways from this game. The North Dakota State influence now that Chris Kleiman is at Kansas State, the offense looked very, very North Dakota State-y. They were doing a lot of effective, but like in the way that they were doing like the motions before the snap. They were running the ball right up the middle with a white running back. Like when I said in our preview of Kansas State, I was like, you know, Skylar Thompson is a very like he's built in the mold of the quarterbacks that have been successful.
He did.
And he didn't have a great game, 10 of 18, 123 yards and a touchdown. But just he fits well in the offense. And Kansas State to me feels now like a team that maybe we need to start paying a little bit more attention to. Not to win the Big 12 this year, but because it's obvious to me that the culture is already starting to take place. Right. And that's what we were worried about is if they got off to a bad start, you know, fans and like, oh, this isn't the Bill Snyder Kansas State we're all used to.
No, it's better
now.
Yeah. And
things could get rolling in a nice little direction here for them. I mean, this is great. So and then on the go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
And then I was just going to say on the Mississippi State side, like, yeah, this is a terrible loss. Garrett Schrader looks to be a pretty good quarterback now. I would roll with him the rest of the way.
Yeah.
The helicopter tackle thing was hilarious too.
Amazing.
Which just like a sheer, like, I can't even believe he put out that much effort.
It was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, but they just got to get better passing the football, man. The combined passing for them last game, 11 of 27 for 151 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions.
And that's not against an SEC defense.
No, and Kansas State's defense played very well, but you still got to play a lot of good defenses on your schedule. Just you got to get some sort of passing game going to make it easier because Kylan Hill is like showed again. He's one of the better running backs in the country.
Mississippi State took a big step back this year. And
what's crazy to me is I still feel like they could win 8 or 9 games with the rest of their schedule.
Well, because their defense is still solid and they have a great running game. And so if they can just get competent, they can get competent quarterback play, then, you know, they're going to have success. But I'm not sure based off what I've seen thus far and the way that they competed against Kansas State, the way they've competed earlier on in their schedule, if they're going to be able to do that against – are they going to be able to pull off any upsets in the SEC this year? Like normally Mississippi State is a borderline top 25 team every single year that goes and beats, you know, Auburn when they're ranked 8th or Florida.
If they lose to Kentucky this week, then I'll maybe start hitting the panic alarm.
Sure.
But, you know, and you're right. Like, will they beat Auburn? Will they beat LSU? Will they beat Penn? Will they beat Alabama?
Yeah.
But that's only, like they should still like end up like you're saying, like a borderline top 25 team if they can get competent quarterback play.
Right. And then on the Kansas State,
it doesn't help for them either that as soon as Tommy Stevens was named the starter, what's his name? The quarterback, Keaton Thompson, immediately entered the transfer portal.
Right.
So now that Tommy Stevens is hurt, you have to go to this freshman, and you know we'll see from there.
Well, what I was getting the last note about Kansas State, they've come away with some close victories, but with the good news is that they're going to be a bowl team. Like they're going to be a bowl eligible team in their first year under Kleiman, and that's huge considering uh, we were so concerned about the culture taking hold, and it's obvious that it's taken hold in a really good way in those first 3 games. Whether they end up being a great team this season or not is sort of irrelevant. We said that it's the first year under a new coach in a very different system. The fact that it's obvious that these guys have bought into that, and the fan base now is going to buy into that because they've started 3-0. That's huge. Like that's just huge. It sets up for Kansas State to be a solid, consistent program going forward.
Right. And I said Big Ten. Kansas State is a Big 12 team. So
right. Yeah. No, I knew.
I
knew.
And this one we don't have to spend a lot of time on, just because like whatever with both of these teams. But Kentucky and Florida, I put it here just for a couple of reasons. How and this is going to be terrible for me to say.
Say it.
But like, is Felipe Franks getting injured?
It's good for them. It's good for them.
Is it actually a good thing?
Yeah, it's probably a good thing. And I feel bad for Felipe Franks. While I obviously, like most of America, was sort of laughing at Felipe Franks week 0 when he was like taunting the camera, like this is what I do, and then threw a pick. I feel bad for the guy because he seems like a class. He was pumped up. He seems like a classy kid, and he's
a good guy. He seems like everyone says.
He seems like a really good guy. He seems like he very clearly, you saw the way that his teammates responded. He very clearly has the respect of his teammates.
Former brother of of former UCF tight end Jordan Franks too, so he can't. Right. The family's got good taste.
Yeah, current brother of former, not former brother, but current brother of former.
Current brother of former, yeah. That would be weird, right?
Weird if they were former brothers, but no. But Felipe seems like a really good kid, and I feel horrible for him because that was a really nasty injury.
Yeah.
But moving on from that part of it, if we really are talking about whether or not it's good for the University of Florida, it's this really funny thing where like you would think. Top 10 team loses their quarterback, they're going to move down.
Like 3-year starter
and they're
quarterback.
Screwed, right? And they're screwed. And yet the national narrative is like, oh, well, they're probably better off because their quarterback sucked to begin with, and that's kind of weird. And
it's not that he sucked. Like it's not that he just sucked.
Was good.
He was inconsistent.
Well,
right?
he was inconsistent. He was never doing enough to win the big game.
Right.
And he wasn't dynamic enough. And that's not to say that Trask is about to be the super dynamic quarterback.
And I was going to ask you about that. So, like, Trask obviously came in and played last week after Frank.
Why wouldn't they go to Emory Jones?
But that's what I'm saying is how quickly do we see Emory Jones here? And I don't know. I've not heard anything about if he's playing this week or not.
Based off of what I saw from them last year, and based off of everything that had been talked about in the preseason in regard to Trask and Jones and competing with Felipe Franks, I would think that you'll see a couple little doses of Emory Jones in this upcoming week, like just doses of it. They play Tennessee. Tennessee's garbage. And if they handle things the way that they should, which I don't know they necessarily will, but if they handle things the way that they should, you'll be able to see Emory Jones come in for little doses throughout this game so they can at least test it out.
And the thing is, Kyle Trask has been a backup his whole career at Florida for a reason. Yeah. Right? Like, it's, so, like, I mean, it's
backup. I don't think he started a football game since his freshman year of high school. I believe.
Right. So, but that's my thing is like, it's the UCF situation. Why not just play the young kid and see what you have?
Right.
And like, that's what and we'll get to South Carolina because I have them in my quick hitters, but that's what they've done. And even Kentucky, Terry Wilson gets hurt. And this kid, Sawyer Smith, like he threw 3 interceptions, but that's a really good Florida defense that he took for 23 of 35, 267 yards and 2 touchdowns, which Terry Wilson hasn't had a game like that through the air since becoming the starter. So, I mean, it's just, at what point do you cut bait and go with the young guy and see what you have?
Well, and I think all of this in regards to Florida, when we do have this conversation, they have not played like a top 10 team. And I understand that preseason ratings and rankings stem from previous year success and they have to. That's how it has to work. And while we can complain about the preseason rankings all we want, it does become a talking point. You and I haven't used rankings on this show for a reason, because we don't really find them relevant until the college football playoff rankings come anyway, or at the very least week like 5, 6, 7.
You had to have played like 2 conference games before I could say like
no. Yeah, that said, Florida being a top 10 team is sort of ludicrous because they have not played anywhere close to a top 10 team thus far. And I understand they're 3-0, and I am the ultimate win football games, and that's what matters. But it also, at this point, there's a ton of undefeated teams, and they are not one of the best undefeated teams in this country at the moment. And so it will be interesting to see if having Trask or Jones at the helm helps them going forward as opposed to hurting them.
Right. And I will say unquestionably, Florida is one of the 10 most talented teams in the country.
Oh, that's without a doubt.
And hopefully, like, whatever new quarterback steps in maybe can unlock the potential. I mean, their playmakers on offense are just ridiculous. Absolutely. They just got to get the ball in their hands in a more efficient and effective manner. All right, so let's move on now to our quick hitters for this week. The first game I want to talk about is Georgia Southern versus Minnesota. And this is just because – so Minnesota's 3-0 now. After scheduling I don't know if you know Banner Society, the –
yeah, of course.
Media. Yeah, so – they have their top whatever that they do every week. And one of them was Minnesota. And Jason Kirk explained how they scheduled 3 teams that you like really, if you're a Power 5 team, like why would you ever schedule them in South Dakota State, Fresno State, and Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
And they all came very, very close to beating Minnesota. But Minnesota did hold out and ended up winning the game. They start conference play this week against Purdue. And then they could really get rolling after that if they beat Purdue with Illinois, Nebraska, Rutgers, and Maryland all in a row.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And so now this team becomes a kind of interesting team to look at in the Big Ten West. So I just wanted to bring that up. It is weird that all 3 of those games were close, though, so it makes me a little uncomfortable thinking how they'll play against some of these better opponents. But
row the boat. Row the boat.
Row the boat. Alabama versus South Carolina. Alabama ended up winning this game. The one thing I will say about Alabama is I would pay a lot of money to see Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith run the 4x100 for the U.S. in Tokyo. That's the fastest. That's the fastest receiving core I've ever seen. Like, legitimately, 3 of those guys might be the fastest guys in college football, right?
I'm mind blown by what they look like on the field.
And then they have Najee Harris, who's
Alabama
arguably a top 5 running back in the country.
Offensively, Alabama has never been this good, ever.
Right. And then what I wanted to say most about this game is Ryan Hilinski, like, just flat out the best story going in college football right now. Obviously, his brother was at Washington State, committed suicide. What was that, a year ago now? That was last season.
Yeah, it was a little over a year ago, I think.
And so as a true freshman, it sucks that Jake Bentley had to get injured for him to get his chance, but he's just looked like South Carolina has a legitimate stud now at quarterback moving forward. And I mean, you can't be happier for a kid like this.
Yeah,
right.
It's beautiful, man. It's really
for his family. I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It's a wonderful full circle. And it was a stunning story, and ESPN did obviously an amazing job explaining all of the details of that to everyone on College Game Day. But for a family to be dealing with someone who died by suicide, and to see their other son sort of thrive the way that he has thus far. I mean, he even looked good against Alabama. And it's really special. And there's not a player in college football worth rooting for more than that kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, so finally, this one, I kind of put this on here because this is very on brand for you and I. I don't know if have you looked at this box score?
I did, specifically because you put it in our notes. I hadn't known.
So the teams combined for 1,200 yards and just under 100 points. So this is the stat line for the Troy quarterback Caleb Barker in this game. 39 of 43 for 504 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Bliss.
And then this is Southern Miss's quarterback. I think his name is Jack Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
Went 29 of 37 for 514 yards and 3 touchdowns. Hold on, listen to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different receivers went over 100 yards in this game.
What?
One of them went over 200 yards and had 2 touchdowns.
Oh my God.
It was literally just NCAA football. Whoever doesn't score on one of their drives is going to lose, and that's what ended up happening. So.
I love that.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. I'm glad you brought it to the attention of the nation.
Yep. So now it's your turn here with your quick hitters. You got 3 kind of interesting ones here, so let's hear it.
So the first one, Kansas at Boston College. Kansas smoked Boston College.
That was on Thursday night, wasn't it?
It was a Thursday or Friday, I think. And Kansas, man. Les Miles is an absolute insane person, but he's building a program, I think. And Boston College is bad. Boston College is bad.
Did you see this game broke I think it was a 41-game road losing streak against Power 5 opponents?
Yeah. So I don't know. They're going to lose probably their next 4 in a row. They lost to Coastal Carolina. But
that was the craziest part to me, right? Is they lost to Coastal Carolina and then they go up to Boston College and double them up.
All I'm gonna say is that I think Kansas ultimately is going to win a conference game this year, which is a huge step from where they were last year, and it's a huge step from everything that I was thinking going into the season. Pitt at Penn State. Pitt really hung in there with Penn State.
Coach didn't do him any favors, though.
No, absolutely did not. For those of you that don't know, Pitt had the ball down a touchdown. I'm just going to read it directly from here. Down a touchdown with the ball at the Penn State 1 and less than 5 minutes to go on the clock. Narduzzi opted to attempt for a field goal on 4th down instead of going for the touchdown.
On the 1-yard line.
On the 1-yard line. And Alex Kessman missed the kick. And then
in a game where they were down 7 points.
It made no sense. And Pat Narduzzi looks like an idiot after that. But what I will say is they played Penn State very tough. Penn State is at least competent football team. I don't think that they're as great as
Penn State's a very talented football team.
Yeah, well, and I don't think that their ranking, again, they're like Florida. I don't think their ranking necessarily reflects how they've been playing. But it's still a very, very talented football team. And the way that Pitt played them physical at Penn State, obviously the reason I have this in there is that's UCF's next opponent. And I think personally that this sets up so perfectly with everything that's going on around UCF right now, the way they're feeling themselves, the way the national media is feeling UCF finally, the way that they annihilated a Power 5 opponent, the way everybody's saying that it should be the top 10. This sets up the way the Pitt has beat Clemson and Miami in years where they were good before. It's it sets up for the perfect upset. I don't think it happens. But Pitt is
okay. Just give me honestly, give me your prediction, final score of the UCF Pitt game.
I think it's going to be I think it'll be 31-17. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong. I don't like over predicting things, man. I said that last week that last week I said UCF would not cover the spread and they were up 38-7 at the half. So I was way, way wrong. But I also I'm a little scared of this game. This is a trap game written all over it.
And you're the most enthusiastic UCF fan I know.
Right. And then I panic.
Hearing this from you is just ridiculous. I think I don't even think it's going to be a close game. I think
all right, it probably won't be a close game.
55-10.
Oh God. Oh, all right. So then lastly, and I'm happy to hear you say that. Citadel of Georgia Tech. What? Citadel beat Georgia Tech? What? And I'm so happy for the Citadel because we all constantly use the Citadel as the joke FCS team that these teams schedule. Florida gets the Citadel every year to open the year. And I only know this because I always love their pretty baby blue uniforms.
Right.
And so the Citadel, if you guys remember last year, hung in there with Alabama to halftime. It was tied at 10 at the half. They've hung in there with Florida in years past and then ultimately get annihilated. And for them to go in and finally get their Power 5 win, I feel really good for them. And what does it say about Georgia Tech? I don't know, man. I don't think
But
Georgia
what does
Tech
it say even more so about USF?
about USF. That's exactly where I was about to go. Is that Georgia Tech? I don't think they're very good. I think that could be kind of a problem. They couldn't really move the ball against the Citadel, and yet they still beat USF because USF is one of probably the 10 worst teams in D1 football right now. They are horrific. And I don't know even what to think about them at this point. It's sad and it's a weird space to be in. But shout out the Citadel. You guys deserve all of the praise this week, and I hope you run your way through the FCS.
All right. So skipping news this week because, I mean, there just wasn't a lot to go over. Let's jump right in now to our Saturday six-pack. We'll start with – your face looks like you don't want to do this. Last week's results. Wake beating UNC.
Garbage.
Which was, I will admit, a little bit of an officiating
Garbage.
problem. But you know what they say, a win's a win, so I take that one.
Yeah.
We both had UCF beating Stanford. Neither of us picked Temple beating Maryland, which, you know.
That's on you, man. That's on you. You had it.
The Herm train beating Michigan State at home. I got that one.
I don't want to live in this world anymore.
I got Iowa defeating Iowa State. And then we both got Virginia beating FSU, which also came down to
closer than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and which also, you know, the ACC refs have a lot to answer for this week after some
very questionable refereeing all across the nation this week.
So we got some interesting matchups in this week's six-pack. I'm just going to go over like the six, and then we can jump in and do like the full review for each of them. But we got Michigan, Wisconsin, Auburn, Texas A&M, SMU versus TCU, which I threw in here for you specifically. West Virginia, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Texas, and then, of course, Notre Dame versus Georgia. Do you happen to know where game day is going to be this week?
It's at Georgia.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start then with game one here, Michigan versus Wisconsin. How do you feel about this matchup?
I kind of think that Wisconsin is going to crush Michigan.
Okay.
And that's weird because I constantly have said I literally like forever. I think I said that
you hate Wisconsin. You legitimately hate them.
Yeah, no, I hate them. I hate Wisconsin. I hate Wisconsin. I am a notorious Wisconsin hater. They are everything that is wrong with college football. I hate them. That said, they're actually getting kind of pretty good quarterback play.
Okay. Let me step in here and say they have been getting – Jack Cohen has been awesome. We roasted him in our preview, right?
Yeah, but he was good.
And he's been good. They've not played anybody yet.
No. But all right. So, but I think that there's also a difference here.
He's just been he's been good. He's been above average against bad opponents.
Yeah. Well, and I guess
bad against bad opponents and then still winning.
Yes, right. Exactly. So he's still been good. They haven't played a Michigan yet, obviously. I just think Michigan's bad. So it's like, okay. I think that Wisconsin, like, I don't know. I guess my thought process is their offensive line is really good. Their running game is great, and their whole identity, if they can have a quarterback that just plays competently, like for years and years and years now, they haven't. The 1 year they did was with Russell Wilson, and they were phenomenal. And
then they went to the Rose Bowl
and
lost to you, baby. Andy Dalton.
Right, to Andy Dalton. But nonetheless, whenever they get competent quarterback play, they're very good. When I turn things around and I look at the quarterback play of Michigan, I say, what the hell is going on with Shea Patterson? Where's McCaffrey? And even when he has played, it's not like he's been that much better than Shea Patterson at all. And I just kind of feel like Wisconsin has all the momentum going into this game that they should win. Now,
they're projected to lose according to ESPN. I
right.
don't know if you saw that.
And I did see that, and I don't really get it because to me, I think Wisconsin's the better football team at this point.
And I'll say a couple things here. Wisconsin's defense is very good as well.
Yeah.
This is the best defense Michigan will play up to this point, and Army.
Well, it's at Wisconsin.
You're right, and Army was destroying Michigan up front on defense, right?
Absolutely.
So now you're playing arguably outside of Ohio State and Iowa. This might be the best defense not named Michigan in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And you're on the road,
which is not easy.
And it's Big Nude Saturday, as Gus Johnson says. This is the Big Nude Saturday game. So it's like Madison, Wisconsin, like people talk about it. Those people are maniacs.
Oh, they're insane people.
That is one of the best home field advantages in college football.
Camp Randall.
Because legitimately every fan is a fucking psychopath. Right? Like
one of my neighbors went to Wisconsin. Why? I'll never be able to understand.
Because it's crazy.
And he's a maniac. Yeah. No, I love it.
It's because it's like the premier party school in the Big Ten, right?
Yep, exactly.
And so the crowd is going to be insane.
Mm-hmm.
If Jack Cohen is just passable.
That's what I'm saying.
Just enough to get the defense off of keying off of Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is the best player in this game.
Listen to me.
Without question.
If Jack Cohen's final stat line could look something like 13 of 20 for 180 yards and 1 touch with no picks, they're going to win the game.
Even if it's one interception, I think they could.
But if his line is even just that, that's not a good line. But if it's just okay, they're going to win the football game.
So we've been heaping all this praise on Wisconsin, and this very much feels like a game where like Michigan comes out and like, oh, you don't think we're worthy of our top 10 ranking? And they just shellac Wisconsin, like 45-14 final score.
Mm-hmm. And then all that would show me is that Wisconsin's a fraud. Right. It doesn't show me anything about Michigan. Like, I don't think – let me say this
I will never give Michigan credit.
Let me say this here. Well, I mean, you can't make me give Michigan credit. Let me say this about this game. The fact that this is 11 versus 13 is so asinine because these two teams are like not that great. Like they recruit really well, but they're not like great football teams. And so it's this funny thing where the winner is going to catapult in the rankings. And the loser is not going to drop that much because they lost to a great team.
Right.
And yet both of us are sitting here saying like neither team's that good. One of them just needs a quarterback to play competently to win.
Yeah.
And it's this really weird thing where like the reason I think Wisconsin is going to annihilate Michigan is more just because I'm down on Michigan than I'm like super high on Wisconsin. We finally have a competent quarterback, and so I said that
high on Wisconsin.
I said before the season I could run for like 600 yards behind the Wisconsin offensive line.
You did say that.
I said that I could run for like 4 yards a carry.
I was also going to say if you're high on Wisconsin, I think that signals the beginning of the end for the rest of the world.
Yeah, probably.
Final pick. Who do you got?
Wisconsin.
I'm going Wisconsin as well. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan comes out and just
beats them by 30.
Beats the piss out of them. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Here's a game. It's an interesting matchup in theory, but I don't know if it's actually going to be a good game because this feels almost like a Big Ten game to me. It's just like super meh with Auburn and Texas A&M, right? Like,
which is funny because you would think Kellen Mond and Bo Nix would be like this super awesome premier matchup.
There's still a lot about these two teams that I don't know enough about.
Yeah.
So I can't get excited for the matchup. I think as it stands, I'm picking Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
Just because Auburn's defense is very, very good.
Oh, it's outrageous is what.
And from what I saw against Clemson for Texas A&M is they just don't have enough playmakers offensively.
Nope.
So unless Mond is incredible, and against a top tier defense that already shut down a very good quarterback in Justin Herbert week 1. Right, and Kellen Mond does have it in him to have one of those like, holy shit, Kellen Mond just put Texas A&M on his back,
right, and
threw for like 430 yards and ran for like another $120 and scored like 8 total touchdowns combined. Yep. Like he has that in him. I just don't think it's going to happen. What I will say is Bo Nix. This is because they opened the season with a neutral site game against Oregon, but that was very much an Auburn-dominated crowd, right?
Yeah, it was.
this is his first soiree in what is a very, very hostile environment for a true freshman quarterback to be playing in. And as much as I don't know enough about Texas A&M skill players and supporting players around their quarterback, I know even less in my mind about Auburn's. Like, at least Texas A&M, I know of Courtney Davis, and I know of I guess I don't. But that receiver number 3 with the dreadlocks, he's really good as well.
Amazing.
Like
I
know
exactly who you're talking about.
I know of those two.
Is it Rogers?
Yeah, Rogers.
Yeah.
I know of those 2 receivers, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when I look at Auburn, it's Bo Nix and guys that, in theory, have the talent.
Right.
But so that's where I'm at with this game. I'm interested. I'm going to pick Auburn, but I'm interested in your opinion.
So it's funny. For all of the reasons you just said is the reason I'm leaning A&M. This sets
and that's up, completely understandable.
Yeah, it just sets up to be one of those SEC cannibalism games, right? Where you think one team's better than the other. In fact, I know Auburn's better than Texas A&M. Like right now, like as it stands after week 3, Auburn has been the better football team. Auburn has their signature win. Texas A&M went up against their top opponent. Now, I'm not comparing Oregon and Clemson, but
Kendrick Rogers is the receiver I was thinking.
He's a stud. He's the one that had like 8 touchdowns in that 7 overtime game last year.
Yeah, Courtney Davis and Kendrick Rogers, like they're
legitimate playmakers.
Good wide receivers.
Yeah, and so what I would say is when you do have those 2 playmakers, when you do have Kellen Mond, when you have the home crowd behind you, when you got dominated by Clemson and you kind of want to show like, no, we're not a joke. We're as good of a football team as everybody thought we were going to be. And in order to be able to have this season, because losing to Clemson didn't eliminate them from theoretical college football playoff contention, right? But if you lose to Auburn, it does. And it almost eliminates you. It doesn't totally eliminate you, but it sets you off definitely on the wrong track in terms of an SEC championship. And so Texas A&M is desperate for this win. Not that Auburn is not, but desperate at home, more polished quarterback and better playmakers. I think I'm going to go Texas A&M.
Right. I will say this: there is playmakers on Auburn's offense that I like.
And sorry, not to interrupt you. Auburn's defensive front is the best in the country. Like that defensive front is stupid. It's stupid. And so,
they've done a weirdly good job of mixing in Joey Gatewood on offense to get some different looks. Like he's a backup quarterback, but he's only got 1 pass. Right. And it's pretty much obvious it's a running play every play that he's in. But he's still averaging 6.5 yards a carry and has 3 touchdowns already on the season.
Right. So
you mix just enough of that in. You still have Jartavius Whitlow at running back, who's pretty nice. And, Eli Stove and Will Hastings are all right out at wide receiver. Like, I think they have enough. And I just don't know about Texas A&M's defense. I'm going Auburn, but it sounds like you're picking A&M.
Yeah, I'm going to go A&M in this one.
All right, so we're split there. But let's move on here. This technically is a rivalry game. SMU and TCU.
Boom.
A Methodist university against, I guess TCU.
Christian University. Texas Christian.
So, do you know the name of the trophy that these 2 teams play for?
No, I do not. I would love for you to tell me.
I'm pretty sure it's an iron skillet, but let me make sure.
An iron skillet? Oh, man.
Here we go. TCU, SMU. But go ahead. Tell me what you think about this. Yeah. The winner of this game receives an iron skillet as a trophy.
It's the most Texas shit I've ever heard in my life.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing. So here's what I think about this game. Shane Buechele's coming out party.
This is why I put it on here. I was ready.
Shane Buechele and SMU have looked great thus far. He's been very efficient. That's a 3-0 football team for a reason. And their defense has played far better than I anticipated. They held down poor Mason Fine, because who did Mason Fine in North Texas play last week? Cal. Like, this kid's had to play some tough games thus far.
And he looked great against Cal, too.
Well, that's what I was about to say. He looked
better than Jacob Eason.
He looked better against Cal than Jacob Eason did, and he looked better against Cal than he did against SMU. I think TCU's sitting there at 25. TCU's also 3-0. TCU's looked good thus far. But Shane Buechele having a chance to play in a rivalry game against TCU after he was a kid that was supposed to be at Texas, that got beat out, that then had to leave and go to this other Texas school where now he just got lucky enough that they're getting to play one of those, what would have been a Texas conference rival. Shane Buechele is going to torch TCU this weekend. And SMU. I'm going Shane Buechele's throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and SMU is going to win this game over TCU. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It might come down at the very end, but SMU is going to win this football game. I'm riding the Mustangs.
All right, so I want to say this. TCU's not really played anyone this season yet.
Yeah.
I would say SMU's probably played the better opponents so far.
Yeah.
What I will say is this. And I don't want to like rain on your parade. This is a huge game for SMU for a lot of reasons. It really is, yeah. And this is a huge game for the AAC for a lot of reasons. I like SMU's chances to keep it close. I'm going to pick TCU for a couple of reasons. SMU has not played a defense like TCU's yet this year.
Obviously.
Gary Patterson is one of the best coaches in college football, without question in my mind. And
fair.
Sonny Dykes has been incredible at SMU so far this year. So I don't want to take anything away from him. The contrast in styles, to me, is what is going to make a huge difference here.
Yeah.
For example, TCU on the season has 69 pass attempts. The whole season. 3 games, 69 pass attempts.
Nice.
Last week alone, TCU ran the ball 53 times. Against Purdue. And Purdue runs a very similar style offense to what SMU ran. Rondale Moore finished with like 3 catches for 20 yards in that game.
Yep.
And Rondale Moore, to me, is without question better than anyone on SMU's offense.
Of course he is.
They did play without Sindler, their starting quarterback.
Right.
And Buechele is definitely better than whoever Purdue trotted out last week.
And you can game plan to just, hey, go stop Rondale Moore.
Right.
Drop off from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 2 on Purdue is a gigantic difference.
Yes, but the combination of TCU's defense, which I think is going to be upper level of the Big 12 and probably in the top 20 nationally when all things are said and done, and the combination of Darius – like, they do not want their quarterbacks to – like, if Max Duggan and Alex Delton combine for over 20 pass attempts this game, something has went wrong for TCU.
Yeah. That's
so if they fall behind early, they could be in a lot of trouble.
Right.
But if they control the game the way they want to control it and they're at home and they have like Darius Anderson and Shewu Olunulawa are 2 very good running backs, I think that TCU can kind of rattlesnake this game in a way where they just kind of choke the life out of SMU and keep it out of contention for as long as they can.
Give me the Methodists over the Christians. All right.
So that's 2 of the 3 games so far we've disagreed on, which is keeping very on brand with how we've gone so far this year.
Yeah, and you've been right for all of them, and I've been wrong for all of them.
I'm still so mad I missed Temple, Maryland last week. I could have been perfect last week.
It really would have been amazing.
Let's move on now to West Virginia, Kansas. Kansas, kind of in the same way that we just talked about TCU, they just want to run the football, control the clock. Their defense is quietly actually not terrible.
It's not bad.
I just don't know. Like you said last week, you don't know what Iowa State is. I have no clue.
West Virginia.
No. I have a better idea of what West Virginia is than I do about Kansas, right?
Yeah. Because
West Virginia came out, they looked slow against James Madison and then got torched by Missouri, who lost to Wyoming in week 1.
Right.
And it became more to me of maybe, Missouri just had a bad week 1 going all the way up to Wyoming. And they'll end up being a 7 or 8 win team. And then I have to be less worried about West Virginia, right? And West Virginia last week found their offense against NC State. They started running the hurry up and, committing more to running the football. And it ended up paying off. I really liked what I saw from West Virginia last week. And I have Kansas put up 300 yards on the ground against Boston College.
I just think that's
I
Boston
honestly,
College being bad.
right. So I'm gonna go West Virginia here.
It's like, so I'm gonna go West Virginia
This is the
too.
biggest game Kansas has played in a long time, though.
Well, and that's what I was about to say, and I just think that West Virginia is too talented to lose.
Right.
Like, not yet. You know what I mean? Like Kansas is gonna get there to where they can at least sort of compete in these types of games. And for that matter, if they don't get down early and they can run the ball, this could be a close game for a good majority of the game. Like
Right.
I don't know that this will be a blowout. I wouldn't be shocked if West Virginia ran away with it early, but I think West Virginia is just too talented. I think Austin Kendall's too good of a quarterback for West Virginia to lose to Kansas. Like I just don't see it happening. And
Even on the road.
if it does happen, then Kansas is way better than we thought.
And it's setting up for a nice little Kansas State game day situation.
It'd be amazing, but I don't see it. I don't see Kansas, and I don't see them finding a way to beat West Virginia. And they could keep it close. Like if this was a close game even into the fourth quarter, I wouldn't be like crazy surprised. But I just don't see.
If Kansas hadn't lost to Coastal Carolina, maybe I'd be a little bit more bullish, right?
Yeah.
But they lost to Coastal Carolina.
They're just not that good. Boston College is just bad. So West Virginia it is.
West Virginia for both of us here. Now, this is an interesting game. This, to me, this is where game day should be in my mind.
Okay.
Because this is the most exciting game of the weekend, in my opinion.
Oklahoma State and Texas?
Yeah. For a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
You go ahead. You start us off, though.
Well, so I guess the space where I'm at with this is just simply like Oklahoma State is going to put up like 500 yards against Texas, right?
Right.
Texas has been struggling defensively. Now, they faced one of the better quarterbacks in the country in Joe Burrow a couple weeks ago. And it's hard to blame them for where their defensive stats are at, given what their matchups have been thus far. That said, their defense has struggled big time, and now they got to face Oklahoma State, which is just like the worst thing ever. That being said, Oklahoma State has never been able to stop anyone, and Sam Ehlinger...
And they haven't yet this year.
Right,
yeah.
and Sam Ehlinger is as good of a quarterback as anyone in the country. Like, Sam Ehlinger is a legitimate superstar college football quarterback. And so... I was hyping up week 1 Houston and Oklahoma to be the like slugfest, this is the first Big 12 crazy offensive game, right? Like there's no way that either team's held under 30 in my mind. It feels like one of those games where there's at least 400 yards of offense from each side. And it just becomes this crazy shootout. This is the game that like you and I want to watch, right? Like this is the game that we've talked about, that we love in college football, right? Where it's just offense, and a couple of turnovers somewhere along the line that slows things down. To me, the whole is Texas back? Like I don't. This game is not going to determine that conversation, because Texas is going to get torched. I just think that they'll score more points. Like, at the end of the day, Sam Ehlinger is such a star at the quarterback position. He's going to go out there and have one of those days where everyone goes, wait, what did he do? It just feels like that's what it's
Texas.
So I am going to go Texas. I don't feel totally confident about it, to be honest with you. Like, I could see Oklahoma State winning this football game, but I'm going Texas.
So in my head, Texas feels like the correct pick, right?
Right.
For all the reasons that you said, like Texas's defense has been bad, but Oklahoma State's defense has been bad as well. Like to the point where they've given up 26 points to Oregon State. They let McNeese State score 14 points and 21 points to Tulsa.
Yeah.
But this is where I think I'm going Oklahoma State.
Of course you are.
And this is why. Chuba Hubbard.
Stud.
Has been just fucking incredible. Like 66 attempts on the season, 521 yards for 7.9 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's pretty deep, right? And then Tylan Wallace on the outside, 15 catches, 390 yards for an average of 26 yards per catch and 6 touchdowns. He has 15 catches on the year. 6 of them are touchdowns.
Again, is that
Spencer
good?
Sanders, yeah, Spencer Sanders has stepped in and basically led the offense better than you could have hoped for, right? And Texas's defense, to me, is so putrid that I think Oklahoma State, and this is a very Big 12 thing to happen, right? Where Oklahoma State goes on the road to Texas and just beats them, right? Yep. And then
it ruins
in 2 weeks, Texas goes and beats Oklahoma.
Right, and ruins the Big 12 forever.
Right. And so I'm going Oklahoma State for those reasons. Would I be surprised if Texas wins? Not at all.
Let me say.
For the sake of chaos, I have to go Oklahoma State.
And for the sake of chaos and for the sake of just a hell of a fun Oklahoma State weekend, how fun would it be if Oklahoma State went into Texas and beat Texas and Mason Rudolph led the Steelers to a victory over the 49ers?
Well, I'll never root for the Steelers to win, so –
I mean, that's fair. You don't have to root for them. I'm just saying it could be a crazy weekend for Oklahoma State.
It would also be it's also kind of cool, underrated cool, that when is the last time a quarterback-receiver combo as potent as
James Washington and Mason Rudolph?
And now they're teammates on the same NFL team.
Yeah, if you don't have James Washington on your fantasy team, you should probably try to get him before he blows up, because I think they're about to have a crazy stretch together.
All right.
Yeah,
you got Texas. I got Oklahoma State.
I got Texas. I'm a Sam Ehlinger truther, man. He's.
I love Sam Ehlinger, but I love Mike Gundy more. So
that's fair. I get the mullet. All right, and lastly, the college game day game, the one that we know is going to be a blowout, and no one gives a shit about.
Why? What about this game is interesting?
Georgia is going to pummel Notre Dame. Pummel.
Yeah, I agree. By how many points? 21?
21, 24.
I'm going to look up the spread on this game. You go ahead and tell me what your impressions are, but I'm going to look this up.
So Georgia has just been all – Georgia this year, to me, looks like thus far has been the second best team in college football. It's been Bama and it's been Georgia. Georgia is complete. They play.
Oh, you're really feeling the Georgia train, huh?
I think Georgia's been absolutely remarkable. Do I think that they're going to make the playoffs? Do I think that they could lose to LSU or even to Florida or to Bama?
Georgia's favored by 14.
Yeah, I think they're going to cover the spread. Georgia is such a complete football team.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with this.
They have almost no weaknesses, and Notre Dame historically. I mean, look, let's just say this is the stat. Since 2000, and this was the Bear from college football, from College Game Day. You put this out there last night. Since 2000, Notre Dame is 1-17 against top 5 opponents.
Weird. It's almost like they don't belong.
It's almost like they're not a top 5 team.
Huh. Or a top 10 or a top 5 program or
a top 10 program. Look, here's the thing. When Notre Dame ends up getting waxed by Georgia, it's not to say that Notre Dame isn't still like a top 15 team. That's the thing that I think we constantly misconstrue with Notre Dame. I don't think that Notre Dame is bad at football. I just think Notre Dame is not as good as the hype that they're constantly given. And so is Notre Dame the 7th best team in the country? Absolutely not. They're not. They're not the 7th best team in the country.
They could be 12th, maybe.
Right. They could be 12th. And when they lose to Georgia, that doesn't really change my mind, because most teams after that
that's gonna infuriate you is when Notre Dame loses this game and is still a top 10 team.
Oh yeah, and it's got it written all over it unless they get just pummeled.
Shellacked,
And I think that could happen. And I just think Georgia is too complete of a football team. And that's not to say, again, Notre Dame is not bad. They're just not dynamic enough to be able to go beat Georgia at Georgia. Come on. It's just not going to happen.
So Ian Book is not only the leading passer for Notre Dame, he's also the leading rusher.
Yeah.
If you're not going to be able to run the ball,
it's not a good recipe.
Georgia, like it's
It's over.
This is Georgia's defense. No one's talking about it. This might be the best Georgia defense of like the last 5 or 6 years.
It's outrageous. Is
like
what it is.
Since they had like the year they had, like maybe not 5 or 6, but like they had the year where they went to the college football playoff, and that defense was one of the best like in the country.
Yeah,
Roquan Smith, like the whole deal.
Yeah.
This defense to me has the potential to get to that level.
Mm-hmm.
Last year they took a little bit of a step back where they didn't have the difference maker kind of guy. And this defense is so good. And then on the other side of the ball, you have you have DeAndre Swift. Like you've got playmakers now.
That combo's stupid. It's just they're just too overwhelming. Like maybe Notre Dame hangs in there early.
But this is the thing. And to be fair to Notre Dame, Georgia would be overwhelming against 98% of all college football teams.
So that's what I was just trying to say before, which is like if Notre Dame gets smacked, I can't blame Notre Dame. Like this is the thing that I like to – we all do. Notre Dame is like everybody's national punching bag because they're easy to root against.
Because they're literally cops. Did you see that?
I did see that
tweet.
I did see that. But let me just get to this. So Notre Dame's the easy punching bag. And they should be because they walk around with the sense of entitlement as Notre Dame fans and the Notre Dame brand and all of the stuff that exists because of history, not because of what's currently happening in the last, in the century for that matter.
Every time they've been given a chance in the last 10 years to prove that they're a premier program going up against the other premier programs, they've been cucked every single.
Look, they're 0-4. They're 0-4 with Brian Kelly against top 5 teams, and 3 of those games they've lost by more than 2 touchdowns.
Maybe Brian Kelly should be responsible for more interns' deaths, and that'll go up.
All right. Well, all right. So to the football side of things, please. So what I was the big part of it that is just so necessary to say is Georgia, along with Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama. And Oklahoma. And I might even put LSU in that category. Those teams are dominating just about anybody in college football. There are a next tier, including Notre Dame, that and Notre Dame's on the bottom part of it, that could compete with those teams. But
like Texas, Florida,
UCF, Wisconsin, Michigan. That's that next group, right? No matter where you want to rank them, basically right now from 15 to 7 is the next group of, all right, maybe on any given day we can compete with that group that's in the top 6 right now. But also, if those teams played 10 times, probably 3 or 4 of the 10 times that they play, those top 6 teams are running away with games. So if Georgia runs away with it against Notre Dame, that's not to say that Notre Dame is a bad football team, but it's just to say that they're not in that league of the top 4 or in the top 6, and we've seen that for a number of years, which is why people are frustrated that they get the benefit of the doubt and get to just sit there at 7 all year long, and it doesn't matter until they get smacked by Georgia, and then we go, well, Georgia's so great, so Notre Dame's probably still, 10, where there's so many other programs that have to do so much more to earn it. That's the frustration. So when Notre Dame gets smacked by Georgia, it's not to say that Notre Dame's bad. It's just to say that they're not in that same league, and we've known it for a while. And so when they get to just hang around there, that's the thing that's going to be frustrating to people nationally.
And for Notre Dame, too, after this week, they go and play Virginia. So it could get ugly pretty quickly.
Yeah, it could. All right, so let me just, before we get to our last quick segment, I just do want to point out here, guys, Tulane and Houston play on Thursday night, and Tulane is a favorite against Houston at home, first of all. So give Meech the credit that he deserves for being so high on Tulane to start the year. But then second of all, the Tulane jerseys this week are just perfect. And I'm gonna put a picture of the jerseys up here, but I also am gonna start by putting a screenshot from our original Google Doc that was talking about this show that we were going to create, and we were trying to figure out what we wanted the color scheme to be. And Meech literally suggested just, hey, what about Tulane alternate colors? And that's what's going to be up on your screen right now. You got the screenshot of our Google Doc, and now you can see the jerseys, and the jerseys are just absolutely stunning that they're going with this week. And I wish they had the green wave on the helmet, but it's really amazing to me that these jerseys are going to be so dope, and it's going to be a fun Thursday night game between Tulane and Houston. So I'm very excited about it. I'm giving Meech the credit he deserves for picking Tulane to have a good season. And it's going to be fun to watch them play against De'Ara King. That's like actually going to be very fun football.
I'm honestly like,
don't watch Thursday night football. Watch that game.
Yeah, that's way better than Jaguars.
Oh my God, it's going to be so much better than Jaguars Titans. If you watch Jaguars Titans instead of watching Tulane and Houston, you hate yourself.
Yeah, I mean, so
you just hate yourself.
Not a Jags fan anymore, though, so that's good.
Right.
All right, let's get into these quick segments here, Jeremy.
Let's do it.
Who's your grown man of the week this week?
You know what? Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon is such a cool story, man. The fact that he sat at Washington State for as long as he did and is getting the chance to sort of show out. And he went out on a Friday night in prime time at 9 o'clock.
This is his second appearance in Grown Man of the Week.
Oh, yeah, right. No, that's true. And it was at Houston. By the way, Houston's jerseys last week were dope. But Washington State, you know, he went out there, he threw for 440 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. They came back to win because Houston did, you know, take the lead early. And, you know, Washington State, man, it's this weird thing. We've totally, and I'm the one that's done it. I did it weeks ago, discounted Pac-12's chances of making the playoff. But Washington State's the only one of that group that's still undefeated that we talked about that was ranked before the year.
They're holding strong with Washington State, Utah, and Arizona State, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. But Washington State's that team that, like, they're fun too. So it would be fun to see them go out and win a couple of games that they're not supposed to. And going out and beating Houston the way they did, you know, it was important that they get that win, obviously. And it was in an NFL stadium. It was just cool to see Anthony Gordon, you know, get his opportunity once again.
Yep.
Who's your grown man?
My grown man of the week. I think this is also his second appearance on Grown Man of the Week. Chuba Hubbard. 32 carries for 256 yards, just putting in work. 8 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns.
Wild.
That's a grown man playing it. Like, I saw something. He had 180 yards rushing in the first, 15 minutes of the game or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just an incredible output. What was the most college football thing you saw this week, Jeremy?
The most college football thing that I saw this week, it was Wake Forest and UNC played on Friday night also. Man, I've done a lot of Thursday, Friday stuff here. Some of these games.
Those are the weirdest nights of the week, man.
Yeah, but
the weirdest college football nights of the week.
But Friday, I guess afternoon. It started at 6, which was weird also. Like what? But Wake Forest and UNC playing each other, you know, a fierce rivalry game from the ACC with ACC refs in a big, you know, it felt like a big moment. And it's not an ACC game.
It doesn't count against their conference.
Doesn't count against the conference record because the ACC is moronic in the way that they alternate their schedule over the span of years. And so Wake Forest and UNC only play each other like once every 6 years or something crazy like that. So they just scheduled a home and home with each other as non-conference opponents because they wanted the rivalry to continue. And
it legitimately does not make any goddamn sense.
It makes no sense, and I love it. It's so college football for these two teams to have to say, no, conference, you guys suck. We want to continue our rivalry, which should be the most important thing to conferences. The whole premise of conferences is to be able to have these established, you know, long-term rivalries. And because the conference decided they don't get to play all that often, they had to take it amongst themselves. And instead of scheduling, I don't know, UCF or Boise State or any of these other group of 5 teams or even other Power 5 teams, they went, we'll just play each other. It's unbelievable. And it doesn't count for anything. It doesn't matter at all.
It's a shorter road trip for them,
well,
too.
it was hilarious. You had all these Canes fans late in the game that were all, like, excited about the fact that Wake Forest was beating Carolina, upset because it meant that they felt like, you know, Carolina wasn't as good. But it was like, oh, cool, at least now we're back in the chance with Coastal. And it's like, nope, it doesn't.
Narrator voice, you are not.
It doesn't mean anything. It's so college football, and I love it.
So I'm going to stay in the ACC for mine. And this is just kind of like karmic justice, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it.
Sure.
But Paul Johnson retiring at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And then Georgia Tech proceeding to lose a game to an FCS team running the triple option
It's gold.
is just poetry, right?
It's beautiful. You're right.
And I like Georgia Tech. I like Jeff Collins a lot.
Yeah, we
but
talked
just
about
the
that.
sheer irony of a team that has subsisted on the triple option for
Forever.
so long to overcome a talent disadvantage, like an inherent talent disadvantage, for them to lose to an FCS team doing the exact same thing the year after they are starting to transition is just pure, like, chef's kiss.
It's perfect. I totally agree with you. All right, so Meech, what is your onion hanger pick of the week?
So I don't know if you want to consider Oklahoma State beating Texas an onion hanger. So if we need to go a degree even deeper than that, like if I need to hang them even lower, and I see that you wanted the same one, so we can kind of share it here.
Let's do it.
But we're both picking Tennessee over Florida in the
Tennessee
swamp,
over Florida. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Gotta be right about Tennessee at some point. We're doing it this week.
Hey, look, man, Tennessee over Florida, it has all of the makings for it. It's the same reasons, honestly, that I said that Pitt could beat UCF. It's that Tennessee has looked like utter garbage.
Dog shit.
Just as bad as you could possibly look.
To the point where their own head coach is calling it the Titanic. That's all you need to know.
It's been as bad as it could possibly be. Florida, who now is on a new quarterback that everyone's like actually kind of hyped about the fact that they got to go to this new quarterback, but they got a new quarterback. They're at home against a bitter rival who's a heavy underdog. And Florida, I believe, has Auburn next week after that. Like, This has all of the makings of Tennessee going into the swamp and upsetting the Gators, and I just want to inject it straight into my veins. And it's so funny because so we have a Google Doc that for everyone that, watches the show. We have a Google Doc, and, we have all of these things, and we write them all down. And my first thought when I went into the Google Doc, because Meech sets it up, was, all right, cool, I'm going to go down to the onion hanger, and I'm going to put Tennessee over Florida. I was like, first thought, and I go down there, and Meech already has it. So I literally wrote into the Google Doc, damn it, Meech, that was mine, you savage. And here we are, and we're both taking Tennessee over Florida. You can book it. At least bet against the spread.
Yes, 100%.
Go Vols, all right?
Oh God. So that's another week, man. Another week of books here for the Preferred Walk-On show, a college football show about college football. Mm-hmm. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. It would benefit us greatly if you could share the episodes with your college football loving friends. We're trying to obviously cut up the show a little bit more and put it on Facebook so it's more shareable for some people.
Yep.
But like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter. Everything's going to be in the link in the description down below.
Yeah, do that thing where we point at the link in the description. Yeah.
Right. So all that, and we'll be back next week with another preview and review for you.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and be sure again to retweet, like, share, do all the things that when we put these clips up. So
all the things those damn millennials are ruining the internet with.
Yeah, brr, internet.